Hello, everyone. Here we are, the last week of the class. And it means things are going to be coming due fairly rapidly. So I hope you've been working on the paper that's coming due at the end of the week. I'll get to that in a few minutes. I hope you had a chance to read through the assignment. If not, there's still time, but you want to get it started today, I think. But let's get into the reading and the initial topic, which is about jokes based on analogies, faulty analogies, of course, since they're illogical. And as you've read in Weston's rule book, there are three types of arguments. Now, so far we've looked at deduction, which was in chapter 1 and also in the deductive arguments chapter. You know what that needed, a premise and a conclusion, or an illogical one if it's a joke. Argument about causes needed the two events in order to argue that there's a correlation. And an argument by analogy needs relevant similarities in order to argue that the two completely different things are alike in at least one relevant way. Let's try one out. Here's a joke using a false analogy. And there are two jokes here, but the first one is just for context, and you'll see why in a few seconds. A priest, a Buddhist monk, and a rabbi walk into a bar. The bartender takes one look at them and asks, "Is my life a joke to you people?" A priest, a Buddhist monk, and a rabbit walk into a bar. The bartender asks the rabbit, "What do you have?" The rabbit says, "I don't know. I'm just here because of the autocorrect." Okay, so it's a faulty analogy. The unspoken premise. The audience expects a standard bar joke, the first relevant similarity. The rabbit is meant to be a rabbi, if you can tell from the first part, right up here. The second relevant similarity. So punchline, autocorrect, makes that false analogy that the audience does not expect. And of course, the logical conclusion is AI messes up again. So I hope that helps. It's a very short chapter on analogies. Worth the time to check out. Let's look at the task for the first part of the week. And of course, you've got the reading questions on this screencast right here, the one you're listening to, due tomorrow night on Tuesday night. And also, you've got the second comic argument analysis. Now, it's optional. And why it's optional is because if you like the score you got in the first one, you don't have to bother with this one. If you really didn't do as well as you hope to do, this is a chance to have a little do-over. So I hope that clarifies things on whether or not to do this. You can take a look at it, but again, if you've got a 70 or above, I wouldn't bother. You've got plenty to do. And here comes a discussion. It starts Wednesday, but of course, as you know, its due date is Friday, but don't forget your Wednesday posting. And the Friday posting also requires a response. And of course, the reading questions for Tuesday night for the Wednesday's screencast, I'll talk about in a minute. But let me take a quick look at the second comic argument analysis. For those of you who didn't do as well as you hoped to do on the first one, be sure to take your time to read through the instructions. And you're going to use a joke from the historical and contemporary text analysis essay that's coming due Friday, and you're going to tell us whether it's deductive or causal. If it's deductive, we'll need to know the premise and conclusion, the logical one, of course, the illogical one, the punchline. Or if it's causal, the first event and the second event, the E1 and E2, right? And describe the overall delivery of the jokes or comedy as how is actually arguing something by making it look foolish. It's making an argument. So keep that in mind. And that's a lot. However, let me jump down to the last part of the week. This is due Friday, of course. It's a big deal. It's worth a lot of points. 400 of them, in fact, 40% of the course. So you want to do well on this. So take your time to read through all the instructions carefully. I'm just going to give you the highlights. You get to pick your sources here. I mean, you will have Critchley and Weston, but they're resources. They're here to help you out. But it's your choice. A television series, film comedy, works of comedic literature, live theater, comedy production, or some comedic popular songs. Any of those, you can mix and match. That's fine. You just need 3. And at least one of them must have been created before you were born. That's where the historical part comes in. And you're a narrator here, or what a museum would call a curator, someone who shows the exhibits to the public. So you're kind of a storyteller too, a teller of true stories. And a little bit about your own life is going to matter in here. But let's start with the first of the 3 questions that your essay needs to answer. And I would say, as you get the introduction going, if you can't answer all of them generally, because you need a lot of details and other paragraphs, at least generally answer them to get your introduction going. So here they are. What argument would you make in response to these comedic arguments, and why? What evidence from your reading supports your own argument about how the comedy disrupts power relationships? And the comedians you used for the ethnic humor assignment, you can use 1 or 2 of them or all 3 of them if you want, but you have a bunch of other options. But you notice they were all talking about power relationships of one kind or another. And how does your lived experience help you make your case? You want to get to why you chose these, but also a little about how that choice was driven by your experience or your outlook on life, something like that. Especially when it comes to those power relationships that the comedy disrupts. And here's my advice. Like I said, develop your essay's introduction. You generally answer these 3 questions. Now, Critchley is your resource on context, why people laugh, audience, situation, all of those things. Remember context on the useful terms list on the modules page. And you're going to want to use chapter 1 about the theories of humor, but either 5 or 6. Chapter 5 is the one on ethnic humor. Chapter 6 is the one on sensus communis. And Weston, of course, you're going to look at the argumentative structure of the comedy as faulty deductions, analogies, or causal arguments that are faulty, and so on. MLA in-text citations, and a works cited page is required this time. I'm going to take you there in a minute. And the last page of your essay is someplace you want to go further down, and before you get to that works cited page, create a new page titled appendix, and just a little show and tell, a visual part of what you're talking about. Could be bits of dialogue, illustrations, posters, song lyrics, album covers, something relevant for visual support of what you're writing about in this essay. And also, a bit more writing. Once you've finished your final paragraph, scoot down about 4 spaces and compose a paragraph describing what computer software applications and websites you use. Well, obviously Canvas, of course, but other websites, YouTube, for instance, anything else, and software applications as well. And some do's and don'ts. Don't get hung up in source summary. Just one summary per source is plenty. Use description. And I'm putting a document in here that you can use that'll help you in that direction. And also the ending, I'm giving you a nice little cheat sheet on writing a better final paragraph. Okay, so it's due Friday. And if you do not own Microsoft Word, here's how to save it in Microsoft Word using Google Docs before you upload it here. And let me show you a bit on the Writer's Toolbox. There's better endings. And there's something on in-text citations, which I hope you already used for the other paper, the ethnic humor paper. And for this, here's something on a works cited page, and it will help you generate the actual bibliographic citations. It's got a cool little citation generator there. Okay, back to assignments. So that's the first part of the week. And I'll get to the second part. And of course, you've heard about the big part of the second part. I'll get to the other 2 shorter assignments for my next screencast. So let's get the week started.